Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello everybody, how you doing today? Okay, we're here today talking about episode 2 of Exhibit A on Netflix. So this show is very interesting, folks. Quite compelling, in my opinion. This episode was also very interesting. I feel it is fairly clear cut, just like the first one, but I can see where some people might get caught up in semantics on this. But so we're going to talk about it today. But for me, the proof is that there's no proof of anything. So I'm going to show you guys. We're going to go through it. So one of the things I wanted to mention at the beginning here is I wanted to let everybody know. I noticed the other day somebody like super chatted in the video during the live or whatever, and they didn't actually put a message with it. And so I figured that's kind of strange, you know, if you don't put the message with it. So I wanted to encourage people, if you were actually looking to just donate to me or any of your favorite YouTubers or whatever, right? If you're looking to donate, you might consider if we have like a Patreon account or a PayPal account. If you're just looking to give us $5 for a beer or whatever, right? You know what I mean? You might consider those options. And the reason why I say that is because if you go those ways, YouTube isn't taking 30% of it, especially if you're not going to use the message part, right? Because I mean, part of the reason why it's worth it giving YouTube 30% of the money, right, is because they highlight your message, so you can put something like Ken Kratz is a ridiculous clown, and then that'll get highlighted for however long, you know, because however much money you spend, it'll stay highlighted even longer. And so there's a point to it, right, when you have the message. So it just occurred to me when I saw somebody do a super chat but didn't actually put a message on it, it occurred to me that some people might be looking to just donate to us, their favorite YouTubers. Allie, I've talked to her today. She might even set up a Patreon. I'm pretty sure she has a PayPal. You guys can ask her about that on her next live, and I'm sure she'll let you know all about it. But I was just considering this because I noticed that recently. I just wanted to suggest that for people. But hey, if you want to super chat and say stuff like Ken Kratz is a ridiculous clown, by no means am I trying to stop you. By no means am I saying anybody's obligated to donate or super chat or do anything. You're not. Eric Jose loves you just for showing up, folks. Right? Okay. So this case is very interesting. Loving this whole thing, this Exhibit A, man. It's great. It's really good. This case now has to deal with blood spatter, right? And the thing that's tricky about this case is it was back in 1987, I believe, is when it was, right? And a Mr. Clark, basically, is it Greg? Anyway, Mr. Clark ended up being shot in his bedroom. His wife, Norma Clark, she had gone upstairs to an upstairs bedroom that had a TV because she couldn't sleep. And so she was up there, and she heard the shot. And then she ran downstairs and didn't even run towards the bedroom because she was scared and thinking maybe somebody was still there with a gun or whatever. At least this is her story, and it actually still rings true for me, and we'll get to that by the end. But so she came down the staircase, and instead of going towards the master bedroom at all, she just ran out of the hallway, out the back door, and over to a neighbor's house. So what ends up coming out is there's a grand jury that's convened, and they decide whether or not to bring charges against Norma, and they don't. They can't. They just decide that there's no evidence there to suggest that she had anything to do with it. There was no forensic or DNA or anything to suggest, nothing that anybody noticed that would have, you know, incriminated her as being Mr. Clark's killer. So then you have to take into account that there was some other stuff going on. Mr. Clark was a bit of a jerk, you know what I mean? Or he was viewed that way by certain people because he would often hold back. He was like a general contractor. And so when subcontractors would come and submit their bids to get their draws when they would finish a certain portion of the job, he would often hold back the check and not pay them if he had some issue or slight, you know, problem with one part of their work or whatever it was. He would piss these people off because he would sometimes, on the stupidest, slightest little thing, would hold back, you know, a huge pool of money that they were looking, you know, to, you know, keep their businesses running, right? So he was pissing people off that way. And their house had gotten tossed one time, all their stuff destroyed. I mean, they went all through the house. They like tore up the bed in the master bedroom, drilled holes through all of the posts and a bunch of things, right? And just did everything they could to destroy every piece of property. Left a ransom note with cutouts from magazine. Letters were cut out from magazine and all that kind of stuff, right? So you have this guy who's pretty hated, right? Well, so there's no charges against Norma. Things are fine for like 30 years. Everything goes on, but for some reason there's some detective, some guy in law enforcement, some guy who moved up the ranks and was a like a chief or whatever. He had held on to the case, and it was like his pet case, cold case file, right? And I'm actually wondering at that, who was this that was doing this? You know, that was carrying around this guy's case file for that many years, you know, when he was such a jerk to people to begin with, right? And then after 30 years, go after basically an ailing grandmother on what you guys are going to see here is pretty stupid evidence, honestly. And looking, I'm going to discuss with you why I think it's stupid, and I think you guys are all going to see why it's stupid. The evidence is ridiculous, non-existent, even. So, yeah, you'll see what I mean here as we get into it. 30 years later, they come back and they say they tested her nightgown from that night and that they found blood spatter on it. And that reopened the whole can of worms. So, all right. Before I say any more, let's go ahead and watch this little presentation I put together for you, and then we'll come on back and chat about it.
Norma was involved in this.
Shit, we all thought that right up from the beginning, but there was no forensic evidence to make that case.
Actually, we've got some physical evidence now that we feel very good about. I think it's going to be the piece that we need.
Back in 1987, the police did in fact focus on Norma as a suspect because they always look at the wife. So they took the case to a grand jury, and the grand jury took testimony, looked at evidence, and did not indict Norma for any crime. In an official proceeding, they found there was not enough evidence to charge Norma with the murder. And then skip forward almost 25 years later to 2010, they get out this dirty, stained, bedraggled nightgown. They take a look at it under a high-powered magnifying glass, and they see what they think is blood spatter that puts her in the room. At this time, she's a grandma, and she's babysitting her grandkids. For the past 25 years, of course, she's never been in any trouble. She's just been this normal lady leading her life. The police arrest her, and she's in jail. By this time, they have run actual lab tests on the nightgown. And lo and behold, the blood spatter does not test positive for blood. They were only able to find one microscopic spot that tested positive for blood. Spot 1A right there. They were not able to test it for DNA, so we don't even know whose blood it was. It could have been her blood, it could have been anybody's blood. It would not be unusual to have a microscopic spot of blood on one's clothing. Somewhere around there. Looks like a bunch of debris. But by that time, they were already going forward with the case, and that was their flagship piece of evidence. That was the only new evidence. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting.
All right, so did you guys all follow that, right? They popped up with this nightgown, obviously, and had looked at it 30 years later. This guy put it under his microscopes or whatever. He looked at it, and he found a bunch of spots on it. Really microscopic kind of spots, okay? He tags them all or whatever, marks them all, whatever, and all that stuff, right? Okay. You hear what Norma's attorney was saying? She was saying that they were all tested to see if they were positive for blood, and they weren't. All but one. All but one. Okay? And one of those tiny little specks was blood, but they don't know whose blood it was. They don't know anything about it. So, one tiny little speck does not translate to blood spatter. That's not it. I mean, the whole idea, the reason why they wanted to use that gown in court was because they wanted the jury to see all the marks, all the spots. The problem is all those spots weren't blood, so they weren't spatter. And it's not. It's like her attorney said. It's not abnormal to have some small speck of blood on a piece of your clothing, particularly a bedgown or something you wear to bed fairly often, you know, right? And gets used a lot. Yeah, those types of garments end up, you know, when you're shaving your legs in the morning, maybe, you know, when you're a lady or something, or and you're just in your nightgown, you know, you haven't bothered to get dressed yet, you're just waking up and in the bathroom and getting whatever, right? And so you're still in your nightgown or whatever. I mean, there's numerous ways how a little bit of blood could get on somebody's night clothes. I'm just saying. And like I said, if more of those spots had been blood, this would be a whole different story right here. Okay? But the fact that there's only one and all the other spots are just red herrings, really, this evidence is crap, right? Okay. So let's move on to it. She's going to point out some more reasons why the police were lazy in this. Didn't really do their job originally. And so, in my opinion, they shouldn't have been holding on to this with such passion, considering they had done such a poor job investigating it in the first place. So, anyway.
A 65-year-old woman in prison, probably for the rest of her life.
Had you ever heard of blood spatter evidence?
Well, I've heard it on TV, but I didn't actually go through every little aspect of how they did with the microscope and the directions.
Had you watched Dexter?
My wife did, quite a bit. That was her favorite show. So she wanted to hear about it after trial was over, so I got to tell her some stuff about it. It was only one sample they got blood. It was kind of hard to take, but as the more they went into it and showed us the direction the blood went, you could see it on each fiber, then it did start to make sense at that point.
Is anybody else asking what this guy means? Like, how much were you able to really tell from the direction that this one microscopic drop fell? Surely you're not talking about the other things that aren't blood. I mean, I got to assume he's not, unless the trial lawyer, who isn't the lawyer we're seeing in this show, unless the trial lawyer was just completely derelict in his duty, like literally thought his reputation, he'd just show up and his reputation would win the case, and so he didn't do any work. I don't know, but this juror doesn't seem to understand that only one of those drops, or he seems to think he can glean a lot of information from the way and direction that one microscopic drop fell. I don't know. Anyway, just thought I'd point that out because it seemed odd.
The defense, they acted a little arrogant. It seemed like he thought by who he was that he automatically would win this case, is what it seemed to us.
I was assigned her case right after she had been convicted and sentenced to 25 years for murder. And I met with her, and she was, you know, in jail, in custody. She was confined to a wheelchair at that point. And, you know, she appeared absolutely flabbergasted that this had happened to her. The evidence that's undisputed strongly suggests that somebody or multiple people had been out to get Ed for years, but that was not investigated or gone into. They could have gone back and looked at the vandalism that occurred with the note that was literally left in magazine cutout letters saying, "What goes around comes around, motherfucker." They could have looked into the literal death threat on the answering machine just days before he was killed.
I'm gonna kill your ass. I know where you live. Tonight.
They could have looked into the person that the gun was registered to. This is Michael Tadero. Yeah. But they never investigated him back in the 1980s, and then he went and moved to Vietnam, so it's too late now. The fact that they would go so far as to make all of these predictions and assumptions and conclusions on guilt and innocence when it's not even testing positive for blood, I mean, that really shows just like a deeper lack of integrity with forensic science testimony in general.
Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from
Norma Clark. I've never understood how I was convicted on the evidence they didn't have. I've never understood. There was nothing there. There was not this big blood spatter. There was not that. There was not that. So I was just waiting on them to turn in a report that said, you know, she's right. But
all right, so
it is
that's
what
the
it
story
is.
of Norma Clark from episode 2 of Netflix's Exhibit A. Very interesting show. I very highly suggest it for everybody if you haven't gotten around to it just yet. Very, very good show. This particular case, again, just like the one in the first one, is, I mean, it seems pretty clear to me that these cops were lazy, not doing their job, you know? They just wanted it to be Norma because that was easy. And so they didn't bother investigating anything, even though they weren't finding any evidence that it was Norma. They didn't check into the other leads. They didn't look into this vandalism that was happening, the death threat on the machine. I mean, seriously. It's like, what were you guys doing? What were you doing? I mean, you just spent all your time looking for non-existent evidence of Norma? I mean, and then that works. How's that work out for you? Oh, the grand jury doesn't indict her. Right. This is why police have to get away from this kind of thinking. Stop the confirmation bias. Because the police just look foolish here. Absolutely foolish. And, you know, I'm sure that they were pretty damn excited when they saw when those microscopic dots were discovered all over that gown. But hey, the hearts should have sank when they found out that only one of those spots was actual blood. Okay, and they couldn't even get a DNA profile, so they don't even know whose blood it was. It could have very, very, very easily been Norma's blood. It's her nightgown, right? What were they doing? What were they doing then? That's my question, right? And it's like I said, these seams run through every single wrongful conviction that I've looked at and looked into and stuff. You get these same type of seams. Lazy police work, lazy investigation work, lazy, not wanting to have to do anything really hard. Often, one thing that they seem to rely on is pinning it on a mentally challenged kid. That way we don't have to really search for this guy and hunt him down. Hey, we'll just get this kid for it. There we go. The public sees that we got somebody for it. All right, good enough. And it's not good enough, because the wrongful convictions are going to continue to rack up. And trust me, you law enforcement officers out there, the jurisdictions where you work are going to get sick of paying out because of shoddy police work. And that's just some advice from Eric Jose, right? It's sorry to say, but being a law enforcement official, being a district attorney, being those sort of, you hold people's lives in your hand in a lot of ways. And I know it's a big responsibility, but it's a solemn one. So when you willfully do it the wrong way and don't follow proper procedure and that sort of thing, you can't cry foul when you get called into question. Just like is happening here. I mean, they totally dropped the ball. How do you not investigate the death threat? How do you not investigate all the vandalism that was happening to their house? How do you not investigate those things? Right? Just like we ask in the Avery case. How do you not investigate any number of the things that they didn't bother to investigate in the Avery case? See, look, that's how you know there's something going on under the table. Why did one officer here hold on to this case for 30 years? Okay? When this guy was reputed to be such a jerk and was, getting death threats, had a bunch of pissed off contractors, contractors pissed off at him, and all that sort of stuff, and no evidence against Norma, nothing to indicate that she was involved. How do you not investigate that? It's just like, wow. You know what I mean? This is the type of stuff that now that we're all paying attention and looking at these things, and we're studying more and more cases. There's a community of people studying more and more cases every day. We're all making each other aware of these cases and talking about each other with these cases. We're creating a community that's going to be able to have an informed opinion about what the criminal justice system needs to do, or what things need to start to look like moving forward, or at least we're gonna have a strong opinion, because there's so many of us, and we're all getting so well versed in the things that are done wrong that result in wrongful convictions, and we're all going to be able to pick those things out like that. Boom, 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 boom. They'll just pop out at us whenever we look at a new case. That's because we're training our minds that way, in a sense, right? And more people will continue to. So, all right. So, getting back to what I was saying earlier, this is a very interesting case. Exhibit A on Netflix. Go check it out if you haven't already. It's awesome. If you're looking to support, your favorite YouTubers like Allie or Rubber Ducky or me or, Millbilly or Paul or Tracy Strunsey or whatever it is, right? Actually, I don't think Tracy's monetized. I don't think you even could there, but I think she does have PayPal. So, if you were wanting to buy us a beer, whatever it might be, whatever it is that you may want, to want to do something nice for us, or whatever it might be, right? And just you can hit me on Patreon. I'll leave a link down in the description below. You can hit me on PayPal. I'll leave that PayPal email address down below. You can obviously, I know the other YouTubers have PayPal accounts, so you can ask them. And like I said, I'm not trying to tell everybody they need to, but for those of you who just get the notion, like somebody did the other day, and you want to just give us some money, well, if you're gonna super chat, well then put a message on it, Please, at least just put like Ken Kratz is a mega clown, you know what I mean? At least put that on there. No, I'm just kidding. It occurred to me that some people might want to just donate to us and buy us a beer or something like that, so I wanted to clear this up. Absolutely, if you want to super chat and you want to have your message highlighted, I'm not saying don't. I'm saying you're welcome to do that as well. And if you just want to show up and not donate money or anything like that, that's perfectly fine too. But anyways, wanted to give everybody an idea of how you can support your favorite YouTubers. I know I remember it was a big deal when I first started going live back in October, but I noticed that it's a concern, and lots of people love to support their favorite YouTubers. So just wanted to give people some ideas of how to do that. So, and like I said, Allie may be starting a Patreon account pretty soon, so that's another way that you can donate to your YouTuber if they have a Patreon account, and that way most of the money goes to the YouTuber, because Patreon takes much less of a percentage. Whereas when it's super chatted and you don't put a message on it, well, YouTube just takes 30% anyway. That's what happens with super chat, is YouTube takes 30%. So these are all just to inform you guys so that you can better spend your money, if you choose to do so that you are better informed about the options, right? Anyways, all right. So I'm obviously going to probably be covering episode 3 of Exhibit A. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. We'll have to see how it plays out. We'll have to see when I have the most time. But this show is pretty damn interesting, pretty fascinating. So I do suggest everybody out there go give it a check out. And like I said, we all need to be getting aware and becoming aware and staying aware of what wrongful convictions look like, how they happen, and those sort of things, so that we will easily pick them out and see them moving forward in the future, and that sort of stuff. So, all right, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.